We see a infinitely dark sky, and through it moves a single blinking light. It is attached to a sleek black helicopter. It glides through the night, heading north. Tess, it isn't a long journey. And before long, you see gleaming lights beneath you. Gleaming lights that belong to the Gothic city of Edinburgh, that sprawls far below. Suddenly you feel the aircraft wheel and change trajectory. You're slowing down. What is running through your mind as your journey is about to conclude?
Tess is doing her best not to worry. It's never been her strong suit. But she has this beautiful violin music playing in her ear. She rewinds it, plays it again. There's a flutter of nerves, or something akin to nerves. If vampires could even feel nerves, she's not sure. It feels strange to be alone. The pilot said not a word. And for the first time, there's a sense of solitude. That she's a little worried.
The helicopter banks once again, and you wheel closer to the ground. You see beneath you a beautiful building. Like many old buildings in Edinburgh, it has a Gothic visage to it. You see it is a large stone hall with giant windows that have no light shining from them whatsoever. And before this building, you see vast lawns of untouched grass. This changes, however, as the helicopter gets closer and closer to the ground, every blade of grass just leaning back from the force of this thing landing. The helicopter sinks on its suspension as it lands upon its lowered landing gear. And you can hear the whirring as the motors are deactivated and begin slowing down. You are able to glance up at the cockpit where the pilot sits. And you see this man's, well, you assume a man's shoulders shaking ever so slightly. Like you're looking at someone who's trying to suppress a laugh or suppress tears. You can't tell which, but he just is slowly shaking in front of you.
Tess looks with some consternation. Everything okay?
The second you finish speaking, the pilot just almost aggressively just pulls the belt from off him, the safety belt, just flings open the door on his side and just starts stalking out of the helicopter and across the grass into the darkness.
Tess unhooks her harness and more cautiously exits the helicopter. What direction are they going? Towards lights? Towards darkness? I have no sense of my bearings here in this strange city.
The building stands directly in front of you. The helicopter is facing it, and he's kind of crossing across the lawns to the left. You imagine the building is sort of stretched down in front of you like that. He's going to sort of like the left corner of this thing, just cutting diagonally across the lawn. And you see, like, he gets to about 30 paces away or so, and then just sinks to the ground, grasping with raking fingers at the grass that now begins to become still again, now that the helicopter engines have ceased. And his back is still to you.
Tess will do that fast run that's half a jog, but not quite, as she kind of crosses. This is very unusual, and she's worried, actually worried. She's not seen a vampire react like this, and she would have heard the heartbeat if it was human. She'll stop maybe 10, 15 feet away. Are you okay?
You are absolutely correct. Tess would not hear a heartbeat from this individual. And at your words, the individual stops shaking and becomes very still.
Oh, God.
And your heightened awareness as a vampire shows that every single muscle in this creature's body is tensing. And then
Do I have any awareness that tells me to run?
No, it's
Okay.
It all happens kind of a bit too quickly, and if anything, it's more confusing to you than alarming at first, because this individual stands and just turns, and you see his face for the first time, having removed the aviator helm that he was wearing before. You see what would be a completely ordinary-looking man, if it weren't for the glint of a predator that shines in his eyes. He looks at you with silverish kind of hair and a jutting jaw, and he gives the most mirthless smile as he beholds you. And a horrid, rasping voice comes out of his mouth. You have traveled far from the new world to this sacred isle. You have found much here, and yet you have learned very little. But it will come in time. Time is all you have. You will find a place. And at that word, you notice suddenly he's closer, but you didn't see him move. You will find a place where the sand will whisper secrets to you, where waves will break upon your skin. And he's just staring at you.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Who are you?
I am your deliverer. And that is all you need concern yourself with. You are right to look concerned, Childer. The journey ahead of you is fraught with risk, but risk is required to become exemplary. You can become that. But it does seem your imagination can get the better of you sometimes. Tess, what is your willpower?
Probably not good enough.
We shall see.
My willpower is 5.
5, okay. The you're locked onto him. You're just staring at this individual as he seems to get closer to you, and it's like everything around him begins to grow dark until you can only see him. And then it's almost like a curtain is drawn in front of you. But it is not made of silk or material. It is made of sand. It is a whirling sandstorm before you. You see ruined buildings all around you. And before you, there lies a skeleton in the dust. And from its skull, a snake rolls from its open jaw. There is a chiming of bells. It is about 7 o'clock, and you awaken from this dream. It has been 6 months since Tess took that helicopter ride north to Scotland. But this is the first time you've ever dreamed about that moment. A moment that didn't happen like that at all. A moment that happened, well, as I say, very differently. You arrived, the pilot seemed normal. You were greeted by a sheriff, Sheriff Garibaldi. He is the sheriff of Edinburgh here. He told you about all the many places and facilities that you could use in Old College. This is the great building that you've arrived with. It is the primary building of the University of Edinburgh. It is a very, very old establishment. And he tells you of the many things, the many resources that will be at your disposal as you learn more about the Camarilla and you act as steward for Edinburgh. You awaken in your quarters. Yeah, sorry.
Tess was a bit taken aback at the notion of steward. Mr. G, as per usual, refused to give full information. It was the first she'd heard of it. And it was a rough road to start.
It certainly was. And you had to learn quickly how to balance your time. You would spend a few hours every night once you awake to study. You would look over the very little resources that the Camarilla actually put on paper. They do a very good job of making sure that any information that they put down, if it is put down, is split up into different parts. So you can't accurately draw a picture, a concrete, factual picture, without looking at different sources. This is something that is probably very frustrating, but I imagine also is quite interesting for Tess. In some ways, at least. She did want to learn more about the Camarilla after all. And so it is on one night that Tess has been working very hard, still dwelling upon this dream, that you see before you texts and books. What do you think Tess has been looking into tonight?
Tess is studying history at the moment. The history of the Camarilla, its origins, its purpose, the early agreements among the Primogens of the clans, why it exists, and why certain people are in charge. She knows if she can figure out the reasoning, the rules, the logic that governs the Camarilla, then she can manipulate that. But first, she has to understand it.
You seem to go off a tangent in your mind. You start thinking of all the different text you've managed to find about this, at least, and how difficult it all was to start piecing things together. And you'd happened upon a fragment of a book of fragments. You were able to make, a few translations here and there. You were able to deduce that this was a book of, a dangerous book in the eyes of the Camarilla. Translating the title, you learn it's called the Book of Nod.
Is it in Latin?
Sure. Sure, yeah, bits of it, yeah, why not? It's Aramaic, sorry, it would be Aramaic, you're absolutely right. It would be in Aramaic, but you have a handy few tools for you to help with that, unless you do know Aramaic for some reason. But I'll say you're able to read it.
For.
Sure, yeah, Google Translate, absolutely. Just entering all these secrets into Google Translate, amazing. You you have been taking little glimpses of this book here and there, these fragments of information that you've been able to pick up on. And it's very interesting. It's something that, in fact, divides vampiric society between the Camarilla and the Sword of Cain. Those that believe that Cain was once in existence, and the Camarilla who believes probably just a myth. Once your studies are over, you now realize that you need to hold court in the Marble Hall. Now, this was always described to you as holding court. However, sadly, in Old College, or indeed around Edinburgh, you notice vampiric society is incredibly quiet. It was you were informed quite early on that vampires aren't the dominant force in this part of the United Kingdom. And as such...
Oh my god, what is? That's just his immediate question if someone mentions that. Like, okay, what is?
You remember on the third night, you had not awoken to the sound of chiming bells like you usually do. You had awoken to the sound of a howl. And so, Tess, you've been having to conduct a vampiric society without making any noise whatsoever, which is the perfect training ground in which to operate and learn more about the Masquerade, because if you don't do it properly, you're gone. You would have meetings with Sheriff Garibaldi, Scottish Brujah, with a very thick accent that I shall not emulate at this time. But you're able to discuss with him the ins and outs of the Camarilla, what certain vampires are doing. And then your final portion of the evening would be taking place with your training. Mr. G, Mr. Gisborne, his full name, would visit roughly twice a week, sometimes once, depending. And each time, part of his visits would be dedicating to talking to you about using your disciplines. The Ventru, the Clan of Kings, are blessed with some incredibly impressive disciplines. You hear Mr. G's voice. Discipline. It is in the name. Presence. Supernatural allure and emotional manipulation. It can attract kindred and kine alike. It can sway crowds. It can command armies. What does Tess see, or how does Tess react, or what does Tess do with this new training?
Tess Hi, am I still here? Sorry.
You're still here? Hello?
Okay.
I can hear you. Can everyone else hear you?
Yeah, okay. Sorry, my internet thought about disappearing briefly.
Okay.
So Tessa's presence is not like the glamour of a toreador. Instead, it's the elegance of a perfect speech. Words woven together, a rush of emotion to Kine, the satisfaction of an irrefutable argument to kindred. She's been practicing the subtle art of lacing her law, her speech, each word with presence, learning how to sway any mind to her side. But this then requires the study, history, law, traditions. Without knowing them, you cannot craft a perfect argument.
You hear Mr. Gisborne's voice again. Fortitude. A gift that helps resist against the bite of blade and bullet. Some consider it a curse that breeds nothing but complacency. But if you master it, you will be indestructible. How does Tess use fortitude?
Fortitude was not something she even really was aware of, not consciously. Perhaps she saw it in Toph or in Donica, in their strength and their ability to ignore pain. Tessa's fortitude begins within her own mind. It manifests as strength and durability of the body. But it takes 100 or 1,000 times of fighting and losing. It's never a fair fight. It's not meant to be 5 against 1. But the purpose is to teach her how to ignore the pain of a bullet through flesh, to push past weakness that threatens when the blood is spilling to the ground. Again and again, she faces the kindred. Mr. G speaking somehow perfectly audible over the clamor, correcting her movements, criticizing her choices, commanding her discipline, feel nothing. It's a work in progress, but there has been some progress.
And it's progress that you know has been noted keenly. For it is no mistake that it is you that was brought here. You hear Mr. G's voice again for the final time. Dominate. The art of imposing our will upon others. With a whisper, we can issue commands, rearrange memories, even take over a target's body. A puppet on the end of a string. And it is our signature discipline, our art, the art of the Clan of Kings. Our will transcends all others. How does Tess's will transcend others?
It seems like it's not coincidence that domination feels the most natural to Tess. She's always been comfortable in command of a room. And now this power, this almost magic, if you were to use such a crass word for it, comes in her voice. It enhances the thing she feels like she was born to do. And Tess derives a certain pleasure from dominating, commanding, controlling the same kindred who impassively, mercilessly spill her blood during the training of fortitude. Tess has excelled in this.
After many challenges, after many lessons that have left you crying into the darkness or laughing at the top of your lungs, you embracing all facets of both your clan and your own instincts that you were born with before you were embraced, before you reached into the darkness. Or at least when something reached into the darkness after you. Time moves on once again. And Mr. G's latest visit is not for a lesson. It is to deliver news. And with a smile, he says, Tess, you have 1 hour to prepare yourself. You're going home. We see darkness. Another night is upon us. We hear soaring opera music. Soaring opera music as Siegfried dreams of his childhood room, a painting upon his wall, a figure staring back at him. We see a hunched Nosferatu, Donica hunting across rooftops, and arriving at a warehouse. We see a Brujah, tall and enjoying himself as he walks away from a vast glass menagerie, and we can hear the sounds of a predator devouring prey. We see a head explode. Revealed to us is that Siegfried is now upon stage, performing a great aria to the assembled toreador. Cinder, whispering of an intention of Zia's, a long kiss. Percussion erupts in the score as we see the slamming iron bars as a feral vampire slams into the door of a cage again and again and again. We see Toph arriving at Carfax Abbey, the old headquarters of the Anarch movement. The body of Sid, his sire, the Primogen of the Brujah, drained, dead. A head explodes. Siegfried is running as chaos erupts upon the streets of London. Feral vampires run amok. More percussion merges into gunfire. Donica is pressing his back into a container, holding the cage shut. Toph is walking away with Sid's body. A head explodes. Our vision is covered in blood. Blood that is replaced by a blinking red light that flashes upon a computer system in an old abbey deep in the London Underground. Donica, a full diagnostic has completed perfectly timed for when you awaken this new night. This new night where you know very soon you will have to obey the summons of the Primogens and the Camarilla and attend a meeting at Elysium. Your computer hums if you would like to make any checks at this point, and if you'd like to tell me what you would like to do this evening before the meeting.
He'll declaw himself from the ceiling and flip onto the stones and crack his neck and all of his bones. His arms are too long and his fingers are too long. Cracks all those as he wakes. And then we'll go to the computer and glance up and begin sort of dancing his fingers across the keyboard and having a look at what's happened on TrekNet over the night and things like that. But there are a few things that he wants to do. Notably, he wants to program his phone to change some of the programming from when he says "Okay, Google" to instead when he says "interesting" that it starts the voice recorder. so that it will recognize. My Google turned on.
It works. He's that good. He's that good.
Oh
It's already
God.
happened.
Oh,
Amazing.
Jesus. Spooky. Okay, so he wants to set up his phone to basically, when he says the words "interesting," that it will start voice recording. Which I think is probably, I mean, I could probably figure that out, and I'm not a computer genius.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I'm more than happy to let you do that. I won't even make you roll for it.
Yeah, so he'll do that, and then beyond that, he's going to start the process of changing his appearance, so he looks like a person as opposed to what he looks like usually. He'll also go to the sort of colony of people who live in this abbey with him, like a bunch of homeless drug addicts that he has like taken in and feeds and takes care of, in return for like a small fee of them giving him blood occasionally. And he'll like come in and he'll sort of look around, hiding his appearance from them, and one of them will be like, "My turn, I guess," and then he'll feed, and once that's all done, he'll put on a nice suit and get ready to go.
As you finish doing your tie, perhaps, or adjusting a cufflink, you notice that upon ShrekNet, a new message has appeared. And I will read it word for word, and I'll be able to post it into the chat a little bit later on. But for now, let's see if I can find it. Here we are. Congratulations, Leech, the message reads, as on the subject at least. And upon opening it, it says, you hit the jackpot. £25,000 for nothing. Isn't bad on any day. But it is something you are owed. Something we are all owed. Your talents have demonstrated that you are true Nos. If you want a part of the fortune unseen, something that is your birthright as a Nos, then be in touch. This offer is not indefinite. The clock will tick for 24 hours. Yours, the Underprince. Now, it was a little while ago since we last played, but just to remind you, Lloyd, that you've received one sort of, wasn't really a message, it was just a tip upon some micro shares that you could purchase. And upon looking, you can see that the very little amount of money that you put onto these have actually, they actually auto-transact. Just tiny little transactions that happen hundreds and hundreds of times that eventually generate quite a lot of money. And I will point out, continue to generate more and more money the more you leave it. So over a couple of days, you've just earned £25,000. So well done.
Yeah,
how do you feel about that?
Good, yeah. He would still be wary and would, I think, like check pretty carefully sort of whatever this message is, if it's an email or whatever, check it pretty carefully, and then go through the point of like creating several proxy walls and whatever to make sure that when he sends something that it's like not traceable to where he is, and this is pretty standard practice, but he'll put more effort into it than usual, bouncing his location to various places before he will reply and say, interested. And that'll be it. And
you're right. I mean, it's, we all know you don't get anything for nothing in this world, but you see that the message is written quite blatantly.
Yeah, it seems odd because, like, he would see so many, like, congratulations, you've won £1 million, and all you need to
see it every day.
Transfer this amount of money into this account so we can hold it for you, like, all the time, But there's knowledge about Nos in here and stuff like that, so he thinks maybe there's something to it, so he'll just reply interested.
And I would like you to make a computers check, please, Lloyd.
Oh, baby, with such pleasure. It's gonna be... It's 10 dice.
Excellent.
Oh, Jesus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
That's excellent. So ShrekNet, as you know, is a well of information, but like a well, it goes deeper and deeper and deeper, and the deeper you go, the more difficult it becomes to extract information. And you see that this message, or at least the amount that you can track it to at least comes from all the way right at the bottom.
That's where an underprince would be, he thinks.
For sure.
And yeah, we'll assume that like the more complicated and difficult it is to get to this person, the more likely it is that they are who they say they are. And yeah, so yeah, he'll say that he's interested, and he'll do some just double and triple and quadruple checking that it's harder to trace him and things like that. Location wise, he doesn't mind that they like. Obviously, this person has one of his many email addresses, but his location is quite well hidden. He wants to remain that way.
Perfect. And then that's just you getting ready, is it? You didn't want to do anything else?
No, I've eaten. I've set up my my spy situation.
Mm-hmm.
Also to make sure that when I say interested, it doesn't say okay. Very important. And once that's done, yeah, I'll just get ready and then probably head over towards Down Street to where Fake is. Because I think I'm going with him, right?
Yes, you will actually all be attending with your clan, okay. Which might be a problem for Toph, because you awaken. I imagine you've gone back to your own accommodation. Tell us what's going through Toph's mind as he awakens this night, the night after you discovered your murdered Primogens sire.
Yeah. So if anyone that saw last session would remember, Toph had an eviction notice posted or plastered on his door of his basement apartment, and he kicked that door in. So this shattered door jamb is still there, and he's kind of propped the door somewhat closed, and that's where he is. His apartment, which probably was never clean anyways, is beyond trashed. If anybody were to walk in, they would not think anyone lived here or would want to live here. But that's where Toph is. He is in this melancholy, as the reality of what has happened is sinking in. Sid has been so important to Toph since the day he was embraced many years ago. So he's like a ship that's lost navigation out in the open sea and the sky. He doesn't even have the stars to navigate by. And I guess it's at that moment, he's just sitting in this dark room. The one possession that he has, or the one real possession that he has that is always kept pristine, is this violin case and this violin that is within it. And it's just sitting there, just out of reach of him. And he's just sitting in the dark, kind of just on the floor, back up against the wall, arm resting across his knees. And he's just looking at that. And then there's that. And at first it doesn't even register what it is. And then it goes again. And he looks down, and he looks, and it's like through his shattered, if you remember, his cell phone is always shattered screen of this new cell phone. He looks, and he could just barely make out the text message from the last person he would expect to hear from, Ruby. And it just says, it's a simple text, and it just says, "We need to talk." And of course, Toph, man of many words, texts back, "Okay." And then he drops the phone and just sits there for a few minutes, maybe an hour, in this darkness before he finally starts to move. As he's leaving the apartment, he stops for a second and he looks back. He goes back and grabs the violin case and leaves.
As you make your way across London, I imagine, well, you can say, if there's anywhere that you have in mind where you would have liked to meet Ruby.
Oh, it would definitely probably be at the World's End. That's where a lot of his kind get together. He suspects that he knows why she's texting him. She probably knows about Sid. He, of course, because Sid was his sire, felt it. But you know, whatever you might say about Brujah, they're probably like little. I see them as being like loving the gossip piece. You know, it's like where Donica uses the internet to do it. I would challenge that a Brujah gossip network is probably just a little bit slower than the internet. So it probably doesn't take long for many to find out about what has happened with Sid. At least that he's gone.
So.
Oh no!
Oh no! Did we lose Taylor? No, Taylor's back. But
Taylor just blinked for a second, and now I am the law, the gatekeeper, whatever it's called.
No!
I'm so sorry. My laptop does this thing where it kicks me off the internet.
That's okay. Can we fix it, or does it have to be?
Lloyd's fixing it as we speak.
Oh, perfect. Sorry, I was just on my notes on the screen. Don't worry, Taylor. It's all good.
Like
now everybody's moved on my screen though, so now I got to look down here for Taylor, up here for
one thing that you will remember, Toph, the Brujah had actually withdrawn, disappeared into the night not so long ago. So the World's End would not be filled with Brujah, but I will say that Ruby does agree to meet you there. She agrees to meet you. There's an alleyway next to the sign that says Underworld, which is the establishment beneath World's End. So she will agree to meet you there. If you like, you can make a roll to see if you can feed on someone on the way, because you will need a feed this night.
If I don't feed, what happens? Do I lose blood points?
You'll just lose a blood point. You can decide not to, but that's up to you.
I think I can afford to lose a blood point, I think. He just doesn't have the energy to do it tonight.
That's completely understandable, yes.
So yeah, thank you for reminding me of that, Rob. I forgot.
No, that's absolutely fine. It's been a while.
That
you actually, as you round the corner into this alleyway, then deciding not to feed, you see that Ruby is there. She's kind of punk. She's got like ripped fishnets and like some form of band that you've never heard of t-shirt, and like the side of her head shaved or whatever. The color of which changes basically every week. Next to her, there is a man that you do not recognize. He's quite a stocky individual, but well built. He wears a sort of just like a checked shirt and jeans, military-looking boots, and he has a large mustache, and his head is shaved clean bald. Though your instincts immediately tell you that you are looking at another Brujah, you don't recognize the man. And Ruby says, Toph, what has been going on?
I think there's probably a moment pause when he sees the man or the other Brujah. But before he walks up, I wish I knew. He's gone.
Gone? What do you mean?
He's fucking gone.
The realization seems to wash over Ruby's face, and she looks horrified. And she looks to the man next to her, who doesn't actually look surprised at all. But does have a sympathetic look on his face. He looks directly at you, Toph, with piercing blue eyes. Toph, I'm Byron Cook. Nice to meet you. Heard a lot about you. From Sid, oddly. It's funny because Sid has never ever told you anything about someone called Byron Cook before.
I think he can't help himself. He just scoffs. He goes, "It's funny. Sid's never mentioned you."
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Probably not wise to admit this, given this new information, but me and Sid haven't been close for a long time.
I think Toph's eyes narrow at that. He wasn't surprised when he heard about Sid, and then for him to say something like that, immediately Toph's mind immediately leaps to, what is that supposed to mean?
Listen.
He didn't seem too surprised when I told Ruby that Sid was gone. Something you're not telling me? And you could just see, how Toph, when his anger starts, his just knuckles start to pop.
No. I'm not surprised because, well, the Camarilla have reached out to me to get any information on where the rest of you had gone. Now, you weren't really aware where the Brujah had gone, Toph, but Ruby looks at you and says, I'm sorry, Toph, we had to split up. Sid said he discovered something and didn't want us all in one place. He said we should lay low and not do anything for fear of rising the ire of the Camarilla or whatever was hunting him, because something was hunting him, Toph.
Immediately, Toph sees Sid, the top floor. It got him. The Ripper. And he's more talking to himself than to either of them. And then he kind of realizes, a bit embarrassed, that he's said that out loud. Yeah. Whatever it was, it got him. It's not the first time. It's it fed on him. And he says this with this like disgusted look on his face.
Yeah, and the look is mirrored on both of their faces. You can clearly see surprise, because all vampires, at least, well, all educated vampires, understand that diablerie is the most heinous act one can perform. An act that involves not only draining a subject of their blood and their life force, but, or whatever life force you can speak of for a vampire, but also their soul. What are we going to do? There's this meeting tonight at Elysium.
Well, one, Toph is just thinking about the Ripper again. Toph is not one to be afraid of much. He has stood up. He was thrown from a window trying to protect Tess, even though he knew the thing was stronger than him. He does not back down, but just thinking of the Ripper, they would see the fear on Toph's face. He goes, I don't know anything about that bullshit. If we have to lay low, then I think we have to lay low. And then he doesn't finish his thought. His thought immediately goes to his friends, and wanting to make sure that they're safe. He thinks of the crazy, what is it? Were they blue skin vampires?
Most, the Thinblood Owen that you'd
Thinbloods.
encountered was sort of had like a slight purplish hue to his skin.
Purplish,
yes.
yeah.
Blotched and horrible.
So he looks at them and he says, have you heard about the Thinbloods running around? Almost like they were weaponized.
We heard of some catastrophe happening in the streets, but the nature of it we did not know. Or I didn't know, Byron says.
And I think Toph just runs his fingers through his hair, and he's like, things are moving way too fast. I mean, why are things going sideways like this? Maybe.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe we do have to go. Fuck. And he hates having to admit this. Maybe those bastards in the tower know know what the hell's going on. Maybe they're working on a solution.
You are who Sid embraced, Ruby says. It would be you who would have to go. It should be you. And you shouldn't go along. Take Byron with you. And Byron just gives you a cold look.
I think it's shared, but there's a lot of skepticism in the look that Toph shoots back. I don't know this guy.
I was going there anyway, Ruby, all right? That's why I was brought down here.
And he goes, I need to talk to you for a second. And he kind of just throws the arm over Ruby and just kind of guides her away from this guy, Byron, a little bit. He goes, listen, this guy's a fucking pigeon, man. Working for the Camarilla like he is. You go, do you trust him?
No. But either way, it looks like he's going to be there. I just wanted you to go and not it, but just be him. He shouldn't represent us. He's come out of nowhere.
Right. Okay, listen.
He lives in the fucking Peak District. That's miles away. She's clearly annoyed that like a local vampire wasn't asked to this meeting.
All right. So Ruby, just lay low, okay? Be safe. Disappear.
Don't you tell me twice, Toph.
All right. And he gives her like a smile. And that's it. He turns around and he looks at Byron and he goes, well, guess we're going to the same place.
It's been a long time.
He just scoffs. He just scoffs at that.
Yeah. I see a question was asked in the chat. Why were we invited to this meeting? Let's just say it out loud rather than just, speculate. Has been a long time since we played this game. So you were all invited to this meeting initially to discuss the fact that the prince had disappeared. And you had been hush-hush approached by members of your individual clans to tell you that you would be going. Oh, I missed the sarcasm. So you do know. Did you actually know that? Well, I do apologize. Well, at least then that reminds people, yeah, it's on the record. I'm sorry, I can't read sarcasm in, never mind. So we're going to move. We're going to move now into the darkness, into the night once again, to discover where Siegfried rests. Now, Siegfried, you've been lately sleeping in the club. Is that where you are now?
Yeah, at this stage, Siegfried will still be there in that same office chair that he's been sleeping in most nights now, if not every night at this point. It's like safer here than at his old house. Like basically everybody knows where that is at this stage, so it's not like useful for cover. And it allows him to get right to work, which he's been kind of using to suppress his sort of existential vampiric anxiety.
And is there anything in particular that Siegfried would want to do before attending this meeting? You know that you're going to be going in there with Lala de Winter, the Primogen of the Toreador, someone that you very much impressed at the opera the other night. Your station was lifted immediately by the artistic display. That's how Toreador rise in rank, and it just happened that you did really well. So they respect you an awful lot. So you think, at least. Is there anything you wish to do before you go and meet with them?
Yeah, Siegfried will kind of take part in some of the same rituals that he has been for a while, both mundane and now supernatural. This like strange thing that he does when he first wakes up of like assembling this like ring of like wooden planks around himself, like meditating within them as he like quite literally casts a ritual spell. But other than that, after taking a little bit to prepare himself, would just gonna take a breath in, breath out, and then be ready to go. He doesn't have a whole lot to attend to other than this meeting. Although I guess just as a matter of question, this whole sort of subverting the Toreador leader thing, that's slated as part of this or not part of this? Just so I can be ready just as much as Sig can be ready.
It hasn't been implied to you.
you.
Yeah, again, a while ago. It hasn't been implied to you that this is something that will occur tonight. But Cinder made you very much aware that Zia has intentions upon the share of the Primogen, shall we say, which, as she already has a rank within the Camarilla, seems quite confusing to you. Why would she do that, you think? But regardless, it isn't something you think is going to happen.
More
tonight.
pressing matters for now.
Sure, yeah.
Save the speculating for later.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Siegfried will get dressed suitably for the occasion. I imagine some small bit of finery, but will otherwise be ready soon after he wakes.
Donacar, my boy! Thank goodness you have arrived. I've been hearing the scritching and the scratching of that abomination that we hold for you. What would you have happen to him?
Well, I think he's important. I think someone is doing something to mortals and something is happening here and we have to look into it, and he's a lab rat.
It is a important strategical decision we have here, Donacar. I quite agree. It is something of an advantage that we have, that he is in our possession.
Yeah, so we have a live one. I imagine the rest have been shot by police.
Not police, I do not think, Donacar. I believe that those that you have faced before have made short work, well, of some of them.
Yes, and those who did manage to get away from them will have been caught and killed by some of our kind, I imagine. It's very possible that we have the only one who's still going. Of that original batch, at least.
It is likely. Abandoned childer often do not last long. Well, at least in most cases.
And he gives you a wink, obviously inferring your position.
No, we were sort of forced into foster care, I think, rather than abandoned.
Yes, and look how far you have come, huh?
Indeed, I have a family now.
You are a family, Donacar. You have done well by us, and you have ambition. You will go very far indeed.
Well, we'll see. It's only been a few months, I suppose. And life is long now.
Yes, I can attest to that, Donacar. Now, we shall keep this abomination locked up here, I think. No sense in causing a needless, horrendous demonstration at this very important meeting. Also, he will remain on our territory. That is something we can agree on, yes?
Yes, the temptation to cause a huge scene is extremely high, but I think it's better to keep him here.
There will be a number of our kind watching him. You see, Donacar, while you were able to briefly sate his thirst with human blood, it would seem he has a hunger for a different kind of vitae, huh?
And we are feeding him?
No, not yet. He remains staked. He is in torpor. However, some vampires, many, in fact, can come around from this. We do not know what this creature's capability was, or indeed, the one that sired him.
I suppose we'll keep him here then, and do some study ourselves. There must be some scientists among us. We tend to be bookish.
This is our Well, this sort of thing does not happen often, Donaker, but there is accounts of such, yes. We shall have our best look into it.
Good. So
Is there anything you want to tell me before we go to this meeting? I always have a bad feeling when you're involved with Camarilla plotting, huh?
What can I say? I don't like them.
No.
They're
No, it is understandable.
arrogant. And I don't like authority. In any form, really.
No, really?
Particularly these. They're especially English, some of them.
That's Rob laughing, not fake. They are. They definitely are. Yeah, for sure.
Yes, it is quite true. Quite true. I hail from other borders, but that is a different story. One for another time,
Where exactly
Donica.
is that fake?
One for another time,
Your
Donica.
accent is so unusual. I wonder where
I
it's
know,
from.
it is very strange. It seems to morph from one from the other. Who knows?
From all over the place.
I'm an enigma, Donica. What can I say? Is there anything else you would like to plan before we go? For next we speak, I imagine we'll be meeting before Elysium, Highgate Cemetery.
What is the intent of this meeting?
It is to do with the absence of the prince. For it is us who have been invited that were assembled that night when we saw the casket empty.
Should we be worried? If I was the Ventru and I had caused this huge humiliation to myself, and there were all these people who knew about the humiliation that I had caused upon myself, this clan of kings who supposedly rule over us and are infallible, would they not think, all of these people know and saw us humiliate ourselves, perhaps we'll gather them all in one place and then kill them?
It is true. Very true, but I think not. I think they want to position themselves in a more ideal position. You are not Ventru, so it is hard for us to put ourselves into their position, but it is true, they are embarrassed, and they are vulnerable.
Let's remind them of how embarrassing it was, I think.
We shall do our work, Donica.
All right. Well, I think I know what I have to do. Just go and be polite.
Yes. Polite, Donica. What a show this will be.
Yeah, we'll see.
If there are no objections, I would say let us fast forward slightly to get us to the point where all assembled parties arrive at the gates of Highgate Cemetery. The oldest, at least I think it is one of the oldest cemeteries in London. There is a ghoul guarding the gates who unlock it and open it. You notice as you arrive from different directions, that's you and the Primogens or members of your clan, for example. You notice that there are a number of cars parked around, a number with headlights beaming into the towards the entrance of the cemetery. At least there seems to be a lot of backup from all different types of vampires surrounding, but all sort of tucked away, but noticeable as well, just to let everyone know that there's people here. There's people here who are watching. Siegfried, you would have actually been picked up by Lala, I think. She would have arrived in a particularly beautiful car, perhaps a Bentley, and she would have just been once again just talking your ear off about how your rendition of your aria was second to none. And it's at that point that your car pulls up, and I'm gonna say you see Toph arriving with a stranger with a bald head and a big mustache.
he'll be doing that thing that like every person who's performed has experienced of like when a bunch of people like come up to just like say whatever. It's just like, yes, thank you very much. It's just like responding subconsciously to the praise, and then kind of seeing approaching at this cemetery, and then seeing Toph with this unknown person. I imagine will become like distracted from just the voice will kind of like shrink into indiscernible words as he'll like become focused on this new strange person who's next to Toph, and like lose track of what Lala is saying for a moment.
I think Toph seeing Sig gives him a nod and a wave, and he starts walking in that direction. I'm not sure.
Siegfried will turn to Lala and kind of give a like, I'm so sorry, 1 second kind of gesture, and then kind of turn quickly back to see Toph approaching.
Yeah, so Toph's in his typical regalia, not dressed up in the zoot suit this evening. He's like, Sig, good seeing you. Not surprised that you're here. This is Brad, Sig.
Pleasure.
So he looks past you, Sig, and he goes, I'm not sure if he would know. He probably would know Layla by sight, though he's probably never exchanged any words with her ever. I know, Rob. That was intentional. Come on, that was verbal sarcasm.
What if people keep asking me questions and then laughing at me when I try and answer them? What the fuck?
And he goes, well, you're hanging out with the posh crowd.
Yeah, it seems as if I finally received some recognition, although I guess it's my fault that it took so long to start trying.
He just kind of nods his head.
Well, I imagine kind of look and see like a lot of these people who are here, like having it kind of be like Primogen, other person, and then like seeing Toph with this person will kind of just look around, and then just like ask. It's strange that you're here with. I figured you'd be here with Sid or something.
Very quickly, you just see that like someone slapped him in the face. That hurt just comes really quickly on Toph's face before he kind of wipes it away. And that kind of easy smile comes back, and he goes, "Oh yeah." So is that I only told Donica about Sid?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. Donica's the only one that knows about that right now, other than you and the other Brujah.
Yeah, so he goes, yeah, about that. He kind of throws an arm. He knows Sig does not like this, but he throws an arm around Sig, but it feels different, I think, or would feel different than the other times. Because the other time he does it is very leering and very domineering. In this way, it's not. It's like a friend might throw an arm around another friend, and he leans and whispers into your ear. He goes, Sid's gone. He's Ripper. Got him.
Yeah, there'll be this moment where Sig is like, not now, like not right here, Toph, and he'll kind of like have that moment where like glance over his shoulder at like Lala still being there, and just like a moment of like, don't embarrass me in front of the fancy people. But then kind of I imagine seeing the more sincere expression and gesture of it will allow it. But then when you say that, his brow will furrow and just kind of like look confused, like he doesn't even know what words to say.
Yeah. And then he would be like, shh. Don't say anything. Don knows already.
just kind of breathe a sigh of surprise. Okay, yeah, I won't say anything.
Oh yeah, something else you need to know. Brad's an asshole. Don't talk to him. And then he kind of takes his arm around and gives like a little peck on Sig's cheek, and he goes, and he kind of makes this flourish. He goes, "Well, I will let you go, Lord Sig," and he would just kind of start moving away to mill with the crowd.
It's at this point.
Sig will
Oh,
just
sorry,
like
go on.
shake his head, laughing at the. It never has gotten old over the many months now of Toph berating him and hassling him. He'll just kind of like laugh to himself at the absurdity of everything right now. That especially kind of capping it, and we'll just turn back with like eyebrows raised to the Primogen, and then before being like, apologies, let's carry on.
I don't think I even need to announce the Nosferatu's arrival because I reckon they're already there. So Donica, you also here at some point. You can tell us about that if you like.
Yeah, he's probably like in the conversation, like standing there, because he can do that. He can like appear without being seen. And so I think like once he got here and said to Feg like, all right, I'm gonna go, whatever. Feg like vanished in one direction and he vanishes in the other, and he's sort of like standing there as like Toph's going, yeah, and Don already knows, and Brad's an asshole. He's just like standing there, and then he'll go, hello.
Yeah, I think
Sig's,
Toph almost crashes into him as he does that flourish, overly exaggerated bow. And he goes to mill with the others and almost crashes into you. But he probably doesn't recognize you at first, right? If you got your little...
So he wears like an extremely expensive suit, just like comically expensive, because he has all this fucking money now and nothing to spend it on. Because he lives in a cave. And so he just buys very expensive clothing. And so he has this like beautiful suit, and he like has put on the mask of 1,000 faces, and it doesn't ever really hide the fact that he's hideous. But he looks like a person, at least. And so he's like a little bit too gaunt and his eyes are too sunken, but he doesn't have like fangs and like big ears or whatever. So you probably know this is like the face he puts on when he's like mingling or talking to humans.
Yeah,
Don.
Sig's eyes will kind of like jump in fright, but his like posture otherwise will like remain like perfectly still, like remaining that like Toreador posture. But you'll like see it in his eyes of like, oh Jesus, like I didn't realize he was there. Before just kind of like nodding. Hello.
He'll look at Brad. Is this the new Primogen?
He looks over his shoulder. Brad? Primogen?
Oh, you said he was
Maybe
an
he
asshole.
thinks...
Kind of comes
Maybe
with
he
the territory.
thinks he is. He goes, he's just someone you would love, Don. He's got his tongue so far up the Camarilla's ass.
I do love those people. So what's happening?
He just shakes his head. He goes, ask Sig. Sig is the one that's hanging out with all the high-to-dos.
High to-dos maybe, but we have things more important. And he'll like do the areas to air quotes as he looks at Don, like knowing that like the things that are important to them, he would say are definitely not as important as what's happening here. I'm not any more in the know than you guys. Just that
Siegfried, darling, my gentleman, you are not accompanying me to go off with your friends. You hear Lala's incredibly posh voice echoing from near the gates. I would like to get seated. I have much to say this evening. A fact that you probably dread.
Apologies, friends. And we'll just kind of give that nod of like, oh, time to go, and turn away before like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'll be right there, and go. without any more word than that.
She always has a lot to say. I say to Toph. She likes the sound of her own voice a lot. La la. And he'll like list off a few facts that he knows about her, that he's memorized about all the Primogens, because he's been Googling relentlessly. Not Googling, obviously, Shrek-netting them. And like finding out whatever he can about all of them.
I'm not gonna lie about that. Sig kind of looks, and he kind of watches as Sig kind of retreats away. And he goes, "He's kind of happy, like where he needs to be."
Yeah, he fits in. And he's one of the
Now, I
lucky
just
clans,
wanna-
though.
I missed that part because I talked over you. I'm sorry.
Don will say, like, but he's part of one of the lucky clans. Ruling clans.
Lucky. The Torador, they're not rulers.
They're pretty, and they're popular.
Yeah.
Not like me and you. Bottom of the barrel.
Whoa. Wait, slow down, Don. Here. He kind of does a very like fixes his hair, but we don't really. That's unneeded tethers, Don. Unneeded tethers.
No strings means no strings to pull puppets, means no power in the Camarilla, and that's where you are, with no Primogen. Who's in charge?
Again, yeah, it's that hurt look comes over, looks Toph's face, and you see his teeth just kind of, his jaw gets tense, and he goes, "I don't need to be reminded of that, Don. We have our own way of dealing with these things in the Brujah. You don't have to worry yourself about it."
I imagine it's just a big scrap until whoever comes out on top decides to stand on top of the pile.
He kind of does like the suck on his teeth. He goes, "Sometimes, we're not quite as barbaric as some of these others." And he can't help but look over to where Sig and Lala are. Some of these other clans that think they're so much better than us just because they say nice words and they wear nice clothes. And then he looks over at Don. He goes, but you know what I mean. It's bullshit.
I agree.
It's the one thing you and I will always agree upon. And this is like stage whisper level of volume.
Interesting.
Something
Tell me
you
more.
and I will agree upon. What?
Interesting. Tell me more about it.
From this point on,
shit.
it's recording.
Yeah.
We're at the bottom of the barrel, right? Scraping by. While they lord over us.
Toph adjusts the violin that's still tucked underneath his left arm. He goes, freedom, I don't mean to say freedom is scraping the bottom of the barrel. It's all point of view.
And this is freedom that you have, you think?
You seen my place? I have a good place.
You have a shithole.
Yeah, but it's mine. There's a pause, and he says that, but he's freaking totally lying.
Actually, you've been evicted.
How do you know that?
If you think I'm not
never
keeping
mind.
tabs on you, you're dreaming.
Never mind.
You need money?
Anyways.
You need money?
I got what I need.
Of course you do.
I just waiting to land back on my feet.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, it's gonna happen. Kings and queens only rule for so long.
And you're the one that's going to take it down?
Shakes his head, no. Something like that isn't taken down by one. It's a change of attitude. Got to win over the will. Right?
Yeah. Right. Because historically, that's always how it's worked. Power changes from the inside. as opposed to violent revolution, which never works. Oh wait, actually, it's worked several times. Eat the rich.
He kind of just stops at that. Eat the rich. And the question just kind of hangs there for him. And you can see him kind of like mulling it over. And then he turns and he gives you that smile, that easy smile that Toph does. Eat the rich.
I'll talk to you later, Toph.
Yeah, I think that's a nice point for us to see this image of the rest of you starting to follow the line that Lala is leading with poor Siegfried in tow. You move your way through the cemetery. There is a road that winds through it, meandering through from marble white headstones to gothic grey broken gargoyles. Strange shadows are flung in long angles across sweeping lawns of the dead. You come to a particular mausoleum, one that looks, well, particularly gothic. This is Old Elysium. Toph, you'd probably be most familiar with this, actually. This place isn't used very often by the Camarilla anymore. Elysium is a place that the Camarilla sort of name as sort of like a meeting ground. Upon it, there are certain rules that must be abided to, at least by the Camarilla, and that is mainly it is sort of like a peace ground where you can speak and be safe, and it's neutral. You actually remember Sid's voice echoing in your ears. It's one of the safest places for vampires to have their meetings. Nobody watches the dead. You find yourselves moving through a corridor in this thing. A cast iron gate is swung open, and down a brushed limestone staircase, you come to a long room, and there is a table at which there is sat a number of individuals. In fact, the hierarchy of the Camarilla sits before you. You see the Archon, Zia, the Toreador, beautiful, graceful as a dancer. That is her chosen art. You see Lady Anne, one of the stewards of the Camarilla, the former queen. You see Mr. Gisborne, his eyes locked upon you as you all approach. Sheriff Sykes, the towering Gangrel sheriff. Yeah, he stands in the background. And at the side of all of them is a familiar figure. And Tess, you can tell us exactly what runs through your mind as you see your friends arrive when we come back after this short break. But before that, let me say hello and welcome back to Performance Check. My name is Rob. It has been a long time, but we are back finally, and I'm so glad we are because this game is really, really fun. Thank you for watching. We're going to take a very short break, so guys, go do whatever you need to do. We're going to be back very shortly, and I'm waiting for Lloyd to press the button. Tess, you had been expecting this. You have spent your journey home thinking about this. Probably at almost every other moment that you've spent traveling back to London. How does it feel when you see your friends, hopefully still your friends, walk through that door and they all spot you at the same time?
Tess is perfectly still. She could be a statue within the mausoleum. Her eyes follow each of them in turn. She recognizes Donica for his proximity to Fag and the clothes he's wearing. Although she can't remember if she's seen that face before. Siegfried is easy to spot. Lala always makes an entrance. And Toph is himself, but with someone she's unfamiliar with. And there's the slightest crease of her forehead, as it's a bit of information she didn't have.
As you walk in, is anyone else, feel free if anyone else wants to say that they have some sort of internalization before this meeting begins.
I think Toph he's probably one of the last ones to walk in, him and I'm gonna keep calling him Brad. I'm sorry. So he's walking in with Brad and he intentionally keeps saying Brad. But it's just like talking just nothing in particular with him as they're walking in. And then he just literally stops mid-sentence. So there was this one time when the band, and he looks and he just stops right dead in his tracks, and sees Tess. And he has that impulsive urge in him, wants to just close the distance. But he can't. He just can't move.
What's running through Siegfried's mind?
Yeah, there's a moment as they enter him next to Lala, where there's like this. What would be to like him would feel like a noticeable hiccup, but in reality, due to his celerity and his perception of like time and speed, is probably imperceptible of like surprise and recognition. But to anybody not inside his own head, looking at him, wouldn't even notice in his body a change in behavior. He would like make sure to like pull Lala's chair out for her and all the whatever light Toreador stuff that would be expected of him before taking a seat. And his like eyes would flit just for like a half millisecond over to where Tess is sitting, and have like that similar instinct in the back of his head as Toph of like, I could just like walk over there right now and like demand to know what's been going on. But now is not the time or the place. And I'll leave the recognition inside his own mind alone for the time being.
And Donica?
Doesn't have any concern about what's proper, just walks over immediately. Like probably past very important people. Maybe it's stopped, I don't know. But has every intention of like walking over to her. And if he can do that, he will just give her a hug.
Tess is taken aback. And even that is an understatement. Donica? And there's the hesitant, like kind of awkward, stiff forearm, like pat of a hug. Like she's not sure how to human. She's had no interaction of this tenor in months. And it is very foreign.
You're back. And you're alive.
Yes.
Well, that's good.
I'm pleased you think so.
There's like a weird feeling where like she's being weird, like extremely weird. And he's not really sure how to process that.
There is something very notably different about Tess. Perhaps you can explain how you appear different, Taylor.
There is a different kind of strength about Tess. The way she carries herself even is one of confidence. The brief glimpses you saw of Tess, who thought she knew what she was doing when she argued with Mr. G in his office. More of that you see now. Gone is her unsurety, her timidness, her uncertainty of what to do or what to say, except in that moment of the hug. She is in a role. Perhaps Siegfried might recognize it as playing a part, perhaps not. But she's definitely stronger in several ways. And she'll kind of do that awkward pat. We can speak at another time, Donica.
Yeah, he'll stand there for a second and like she doesn't smell the same. He's got like weird senses. It's all a little off and a little different.
Of course he does. She smells like Scottish water.
And he's like not sure if it's even her, because this is a weird interaction and she's not like this. At least the person that he knew is not like this. And he'll sort of okay then, and go and sit.
It's as you sit, it's fairly obvious that no one else is really speaking, so a lot of attention is on this interaction. It's a very public reunion.
There's like that moment where Tess like straightens the like blazer, pulls the sleeve, smooths out any perceived wrinkle, and then stands a little straighter again, or sits a little straighter again.
Donica will sit and say to Fag, "That was interesting."
I think it's going to get a lot more interesting, Donica. But first, we will be asked to answer.
And it's at this point that Mr. G stands at the head of this table. A number of other vampires have moved into the room at this point. Some that, well, in fact, no, all of them you recognize. You've seen all of them at some point now. The Primogens of the Camarilla. As Mr. G stands, he states, in the name of Mithras, Lord Prince of London, I have called for the clans. And he says, or rather, Byron stands actually, and he says, Brujah, Byron Cook, I answer as ordered. There is a long silence. Jonah stands, wearing his trademark wide-brimmed hat. He sweeps it from his head and he says, Malkavian, I answer. I'm ready to be entertained by this fiasco. I'm hungry to know the story behind this summons. Gisborne is a night without stars, and they're just purely black. A Ventru, one that you recognize, Verity Blackwood, then stands and says, I answer. I sent the invites. Good, says Mr. Gisborne. Now I would like to begin by BAM! The door slams open and a gust of cold wind moves through the mausoleum. In the frame of the door, there stands a towering vampire. Equal in height to Sheriff Sykes. Equal, in fact, in clan also. A very large gangrel steps into the room. Decker. I answer. For the gangrel. I am no Primogen, but I am the leader of my kind. There is a almost imperceptible flinch from the corner of Mr. Gisborne's eye as he watches this new arrival enter. I don't know if any of you would have seen any other gangrel other than Sheriff Sykes, but it is widely known that the gangrel are no longer officially part of the Camarilla. What goes through your minds as you see this new vampire enter the room? Siegfried. I'm so sorry. Are you eating? I'll ask Toph.
You're striking out because I was actually just listening to a little bit of music that Jeff sent me. But repeat yourself and I will go. No,
don't worry. All I'm saying is that it was literally me saying that so I could turn the page in my document and buy me time. Is there any react? Because like I don't suppose any of you would have seen any gangrel.
There is definitely a reaction from Toph. He is just sitting there, and I don't think his eyes have left Tess since he kind of woodenly goes and sits beside Byron. I want to make sure to say his name right at least a few times so I don't totally forget what his real name is. But yeah, when he sits down beside Byron, and there is probably when he introduces himself as Clan Brujah, there's probably like this kind of this little noise that he makes. But yeah, he's basically just watching Tess the whole time. So maybe peripherally he sees some of this other stuff, but he's almost like Charlie Brown, teacher. Wow, 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 wow.
Sure. This vampire has a certain intimidating look about him. He appears to rival the stature of the sheriff, and in fact, the two of them, their eyes meet across the room, and there is a very noticeable, like, icy stare that is shared. But Mr. Gisborne seems to rally, and he gestures to his seat. Your chair remains, Decker. Please. The gangrel just gives a low growl, stalks around the table, draws the chair noisily across the stone floor, and sits. The chair creaks.
Tess looks over to Mr. Gisborne, and Toph, for watching her, would see the surprise on her face. She knows the gangrel are not part of the Camarilla. She can picture the scrap of computer paper, this one. Someone was slightly more modern when they put it into the book of fragments. Sometime in the late 90s, 98, 99, somewhere, the gangrel left. Why are they here? And then it's gone. She's in control again.
It's that point that you come back into the room out of your reverie, and Mr. Gisborne speaks. We have a number of matters that require immediate discussion. It is no secret that this council was originally called, as all assembled here witnessed, the absence of our Lord Prince. It was unprecedented information, and it has swept from this domain. It spread like wildfire across the world. It is also a fact that the enemies of our domain are taking notice. They have taken notice. Before we come on to that, though, it would be remiss of me to not begin proceedings without acknowledging that we are missing a Primogen. And Mr. Gisborne's eyes just drift automatically to you, Toph.
And I may be feeling the weight of his eyes on him. It kind of snaps Toph back. He looks, and you would see that like confusion on his face as he, it's like when you kind of hear someone say something, but you're not really paying much attention. So he's just piecing it back together, and he goes, well, "That's fucking obvious."
Yes, Brujah. It is obvious. Obvious that you let your former Primogen left him to greet the dawn. Did you not think it might be prudent to share this information?
Toph just shrugs. Seems you already know.
A lot less sooner than we would have liked. I would like to welcome Byron Cook, a Brujah who will be overseeing these proceedings as an acting Primogen. However, a new Primogen must be decided by your clan. This will be something that you will see to. As the childer of Sid, it is a custom and tradition that you be a part of this decision. I trust you will be capable of seeing to this personally.
I think coldly, Toph says, "Don't worry, Mr. Gisborne. I'm well aware of the customs within my clan."
Truly. The gaze is held for an incredibly uncomfortable amount of time.
It's very uncomfortable for Toph. If he was human, you would see the sweat starting to make its way down his brow. But it's like one of those things where he just doesn't want to break the gaze. But this is like a contest that I think he really is just outmatched in. So he kind of casually tries to make it, and he looks over. He goes, "Well, Byron, it looks like we got work to do." But really what he wanted to do, he just wants to break the gaze that he has with Mr. G and do it in a way that allows him to have a shred of his bravado intact.
Byron, on the other hand, looks like he's just been dropped in a vat of shit. Like
that's not what I came here for. Man.
No, he's kind of like sort of blindsided by that, thinking that it was going to be him delivering the news. Regardless, Mr. Gisborne turns his gaze to the rest of the assembled kindred. While we are discussing recent events, it should be mentioned that enemies from beyond have been taking notice. After this council was called, last night, in fact, the streets of London were beset with abominations. As I understand it, Fag, you have apprehended this individual. What can you tell us of him? Fag gives Mr. Gisborne a long, amused look down his long, crooked nose, and he arches his fingers together.
This individual has a name, Mr. Gisborne. His name is Owen. It was very nice to meet him right before I put a stake in him. I did what I had to do to preserve him. To see, of course, how the Camarilla would like to act upon his being. This Owen, he is a thin blood, sired with the blood of a Diablerist. We have him held securely in Down Street. He seems to be sustained briefly with human blood, but, he is only truly sated by one kind of blood, the kind of a vampire. He is mad with the stilled voices of the many vampiric souls taken by this Diablerist who has created him.
Mr. G just stares at him for a moment. Winchester, the Hunter Syndicate, they have served as a buffer against the threat that these thin bloods present. They were able to deal with these thin bloods without us lifting a finger. But this wasn't an attack. This was a message. We have been bolstered from the direct conflict by Winchester. They have unwittingly defended our borders against this display of savagery. The beasts set loose upon the streets of London have all but confirmed to us a very dire fact, that the Sabbat, they once again move upon London. Tess, you were back in the study in Edinburgh, glimpsing once again at that fragment of information, this time on ancient parchment, dusty and rotting at the very touch. You see a symbol emblazoned into the corner of the page. It almost looks like the symbol of the Camarilla, but inverted and shaped like a sword. The Sword of Cain. You hear Mr. G's voice in one of the many lessons that you underwent. The Sabbat are in direct opposition to the Camarilla, while we uphold the Masquerade to preserve the balance between predator and prey. They see it as a blasphemy to our supposed forefather Cain. They believe that vampires should be the dominant force across the world, with mankind as slaves and cattle. Throwing off this balance only leads to destruction. What goes through your mind, Tess, as these words echo in your mind?
Tess is, again, worried that now familiar pit in her stomach. With the Camarilla already in shambles, the thought of the Sabbat, it threatens to undo what life she's come to know. Although part of her wonders if that wouldn't be such a bad thing. And then the thought is gone. And she is concerned once again. How can we organize? How can we unite against diablerie, against the Sabbat?
Is this Tess's response in the lesson to begin with, or at the council?
That's her internal response at the council.
Okay, so you're just thinking that. That's fine. Yeah, it's a question that's plagued many for a very long time. A very long time. If anyone would like to, you can certainly make an occult roll with intelligence to see if anything comes up in your collective intelligence about the camera. No, the Sabbat. Sorry.
Good at that, actually.
Remind me again what the success threshold is as it starts at.
So 6 is our standard difficulty. So any above a 6, please. Any 10s re-roll as criticals. Any 1s re-roll and deduct them.
It has to be above a 6, not meet a 6, right?
It's
Or is it-
6 and above,
6
I
is
believe.
a success.
Okay.
Yeah, 6 is a success.
Thank
I
you.
had 3 successes.
Okay.
I got
So, 4 for Donica and 4 for Siegfried as well. Yeah, I mean, look, the Sabbat are always and always have been a looming threat over vampiric society. It would not take much research to know or learn that conflict has raged against the Camarilla in the form of many opposing sects. Many of these that you've learned about, Tess in particular, on your educational trip away. But the rest of you understand that these vampires, they operate by different means and they haven't been seen for a very long time. But what you do know about them seems to match up. The siring of vampires with the direct intention of starving them and letting them loose upon humanity to break the Masquerade is one of their opening tactics, shall we say.
Do we know, Rob, like what clans are involved with the Sabbat? Do we know anything about that?
With a 4, I would say that you have heard that the rumblings of many clans about the world. You would know that there is a clan known as the Tsimisi, which are a terrifying force in their own right. There's also another clan known as La Sombra, the Shadow Shifters, the ones that make vampires scared of the dark. So I'd say that's, you probably know those two at least.
I'll just keep that to myself for now, but I'll definitely be thinking on that and like Misi and the way that they change appearances and mess with people's makeup and whether that's involved in making these Thinbloods.
It's a consideration. But whilst you dwell on this, Mr. Gisborne is in sort of full exposition mode, clearly. He says, the Sabbat, almost mirroring what he was saying to Tess, the Sabbat are in direct opposition of the Camarilla. Their calling card tactic is to embrace en masse, starve their new childer, and then set them loose, abandoning them in our domains for all sorts of different activities and slights against our way of existence. Embracing them and abandoning them. Does this sound familiar? This is the other reason why it has been insisted upon that the childer spawned into the night and left are to be addressed.
Tess feels like this sense of dread. She is Ventrue, and now nothing is making sense.
Danica feels the entire opposite of like, oh, yep, this makes sense. This is why I hate these fuckers. Like, of course. Like, chaos is great. We should be in charge. Like, yeah. And he's like thinking like, I get it. And it makes sense why we don't know who our sires are. And he'll smile at the revelation.
And Siegfried will be caught somewhere, I think, in the middle of that. Not necessarily into unease, but definitely no joy. at the sense of it either. More curiosity than anything. The whole ties to his sire, like, just never really interested him. So though he's curious to know more, there's no like deep pull in a direction emotionally.
Toph, what does it feel like to learn that your friends have come from such a terrifying place? Apparently.
I think it's a mixture of emotions for Toph. One, it's like that when you get that last puzzle piece that you thought you lost and you put it into place, and you already kind of knew what the tapestry or the puzzle was going to be when done, but then when you step back and look, you're just kind of you're almost in this shocked horror when it's nothing what you thought. So I think it's what he looks at them as. He looks at them, and it's a fleeting thought, I think, because that isn't who they are. I mean, despite Donika's rebellion against authority, and he might find something that makes him akin, even his own rebellion against authority, it is not what the Sabbat embrace. It is so much worse than what Toph sees as a liberation of vampires. And so he has this like, so it's just like kind of needling at him. And so he has this conflict in his head right now. He's fighting these emotions, which Toph deals with emotion by punching things, and he can't punch anything right now, and he doesn't want to punch anything. If he has learned something, like just as much as they learned from Toph, helping them become vampires and learn the little bits and pieces along the way, I think he's learned stuff from them. He has kind of got that touch back. He talks about humanity, but he hasn't really embraced it as much as he has with these three. You know, they each present different dynamics, and so yeah, he is just torn in. But I think that what wins out in this struggle in his mind is this affection and this, though some might argue it, loyalty to what he considers like his. Yeah, I see that look, like loyalty. Uh, um, you know, much more so than maybe he even feels towards some of it in his own clan, towards these three. You know. So.
I think it's doubtless that you feel that loyalty. I mean, that you've been on quite a lot of escapades before, but then feeling something is different on acting upon it, isn't it? But whilst this information is sort of like washing over you all, Mr. G rather considerately gives you a moment just to take a second to think about it.
Ask him straight up.
Yeah, by all means, by all means.
Is the implication here, Mr. G, that we were spawned by Sabbat?
The signs appear to be leaning that way.
And the Sabbat...
It is no coincidence. It is no coincidence that the night that you were embraced also saw the public breach of the Masquerade. Ripper, daubed, desecrating Big Ben, violating the Masquerade and diablerizing an unknown toreador upon it.
Sabbat is a philosophy the same way that the Masquerade is that right? It's not inherently part of your blood.
That is correct.
So we're not guilty of anything.
I never said you were.
There was an implication, and I think you know that.
There is a connection that binds you to the Sabbat, if this conclusion is true. We do not have your sires in front of you. We do not have them here to inspect. But their absence, what's the saying? Speaks louder than words. But there are many things to consider, many things that need explaining to you. Why would we not tell you this straight away, perhaps?
Why would you not tell us anything straight away, or even at all ever? Explain something to us, rather than have us groping around in the dark. That would be the question that I would ask, I suppose.
Had we told you that your sires were suspected as Sabbat, you may well have sought them out, Donica. We would not do well to swell the ranks of the enemy before war.
Oh, I know now.
If you do know now. Oh, yes, you do know now.
Is membership in the Sabbat a crime?
Sorry, could you repeat that, please, Lloyd?
Is membership in the Sabbat a crime?
Yes.
And what's the punishment for that crime?
Final death, immediate.
Suppose I won't seek them out then.
Well, that's just the thing. You see, like I said, if we had told you that your sires were suspected as Sabbat, you could well have sought them out. Because, let us be quite frank, any time that either myself or the Camarilla have told you not to do anything, you have always insisted upon acting in the contrary. I told you on the night that we met that those that embraced you would be hunted down and destroyed. And they will be. Destroyed by you. You will use the bonds of your blood to trace them through the night. You will form a coterie, and with the resources of the Camarilla behind you, you will hunt down and destroy those that abandoned and sought to unleash you upon this world.
Do I have to?
Yes.
I have other things to do. An unlife to live. Businesses to run. I don't want to abandon all of that to go and try and find someone who's obviously more powerful than me and then try to kill them.
We did not say that you would have to kill them, but you will be instrumental in their destruction. You are our strongest means of finding them quickly and effectively. We would, of course, like to ensure that you are compensated for this. We would not expect you to do this out of the kindness of your own hearts.
There's a small twitch at the corner of Tess's mouth at the thought of being compensated. She finds it funny.
And probably noticeable to the rest of you as well, actually. Well, maybe.
And what's his compensation?
Along with your continued existence, as I mentioned, resources of the Camarilla behind you.
We have those things anyway. We're members of the Camarilla, citizens, and my continued existence is already my own, and so they aren't giving us anything. They're giving us orders. I understand you need to sugarcoat this maybe for these two who might not understand, but it's clear to me that we're just being told what to do with no real incentive.
Embracing you was
We're perfectly clear on what's going on, Donica. Stop being so condescending to us about it. We're aware. We're just not making a scene.
Yeah, he'll look like at him like, you should be making a scene. This is ridiculous. It's outrageous.
Perhaps these things may be discussed at another time, in another place, with less of an audience.
But that's just the thing. This is part of your, shall we say, compensation. And that is why I was ensuring that all of the Primogens of our great clans of the Camarilla were present, with an exception to you, Decker. We will discuss your presence here shortly. But the resources of the other clans will be at your disposal also. And as I mentioned, This coterie that you form will have the resources of the Camarilla behind you. Now, because of this, I'm sure we can all agree that these efforts will be made infinitely more effective with leadership. Leadership that will deliver an effective counterstrike upon the Sword of Cain and focus your efforts on one goal as an effective unified force. This brings the Camarilla closer together. This brings us to the next matter on the agenda. Allow me to be the first to congratulate you on your new position, Auditor Tess Marshall. May your past connections lend synergy to this new coterie. You will work with those that were sired along with you that night. You will then be given time to plan a directive that you shall deliver to me personally. You will then work to hunt down your sires, firstly to investigate, and then to deliver the final death upon them. And as I mentioned, the Primogen of all clans will accommodate you to this end. That is your compensation.
How much time?
How long will you need?
She raises an eyebrow. 8 years.
It can be done. Though the initial threat will need to be prevented first. Ripper is out of control. One Primogen already
That is
lied.
not within the function of my coterie.
He nods. 8 years for your sires. But you would prioritize Ripper all the same. Very well. What's running through everyone's minds?
Just can't believe he fucking agreed to 8 years. She was expecting to negotiate it down to like 6 months.
Same old shit, Donica thinks. Same old shit as always. Just get told to do something, have no input, and then there's like talk of compensation, of which there is none. Just being ordered around. He's furious about it and will not be doing it. He'd be seething, I think, at being told to do this.
I mean, what that compensation from all of the clans sort of agreeing to work with you, that involves the secrets of all clans being at your disposal as well. This is huge, but that's entirely up to you. We can have that discussion another time. Toph, what are you thinking about?
I think where Toph is sitting, he kind of just sits back. He kind of just leans back on the back two legs of his this chair, and it kind of creaks. Not really sure if it's going to fully hold his weight, but it does. And he just has this almost like schoolboy dumb grin on his face, and he's looking at Tess, and he's thinking to himself, he's like, he's seen her stand up to Mr. G before, but with a quavering voice and not any sense of assurity. And now, not only did she stand up to him just now, but he actually acquiesced to what she said. So he just has this big beaming smile on his face. And it's there for several long seconds before he probably realizes what he's doing. And it just kind of melts just to that very casual smile that he typically has. But if they are, I mean, I see, he sees Donica struggling, but he expects that. But he has already made his mind up that he is going to insert himself in some way in this corte, whether they know it yet or not. He's just figuring out how to deliver the great news to them.
What's Sig thinking about?
Siegfried's having a difficult time like focusing specifically on like any one thing. There's been like so much that's happened across like 2 minutes that he's like trying to process it all. He feels like surprisingly offended by the fact that Donica like insulted him in front of all these people. Like much more than even he normally would be. He feels that maybe the Toreador are rubbing off on him with their with their poshness. And then there's all this talk of like the clans being at their disposal and having to hunt down the sires. And he's not particularly interested in the sire angle still, even after being told all this information about them. It feels so distant somehow in his mind, even though it's so pressing as far as their objective goes. But then kind of thinking of like, well, if all the different clans are at our disposal, he'll kind of have that lingering thought of the secrets he's stolen from Vincent's book, and that perhaps if the clans are at their disposal and their secrets along with them, that his continued training and study might not be as far off as he figured.
Make no mistake, this coterie will be the weapon used to parry the Sword of Cain. You will be under great threat. But, as I'm sure all of you can agree, this is nothing new. We give you purpose. We give you direction. We give you authority, led by our new auditor here. We give you station. And as sires of Sabbat vampires, we allow you to continue your long nights. You may discuss this and return with this directive that Auditor Marshall shall deliver to me.
Mr. Gisborne, a point of order.
Please.
Alleged Sabbat sires. As of yet, there is no proof. It is merely circumstantial that our existence began on the same night as Ripper. That we have not yet met our sires is not proof of their existence within the Sabbat, nor proof of their non-existence within the Camarilla.
You speak truly. But I have seen the Sabbat attack before.
That does not mean that we are Sabbat sired. It may well be true, but it is at this point an allegation only.
Instinct is something that I pride myself upon. But you are right. Forgive me. Alleged Sabbat sires. Is there anything else that you would ask?
Not yet.
I have further matters to discuss. Byron, you will remain here and deliver the rest of our matters to your kind. Auditor, I suggest you begin immediately.
I take it then we are dismissed.
You are. And Toph, you go too.
Does it not seem prudent to have the childer of the now deceased Brujah Primogen present? Mr. Gisborne.
He will serve his purpose by helping elect a new Primogen, as I stated before.
She just slightly inclines her head and will stand and begin to walk out.
Yep, so Tess follows. Donica's already probably out the door at this point.
Yeah, Siegfried will likewise stand up, give like a graceful bow to Lala as he dismisses himself from her side, leaving her here before kind of glancing over with some surprise at Tess as well. And then we'll head away.
You do notice as well, Siegfried, I will point out that Zia, throughout a lot of this meeting, has spent a lot of time looking at you and not trying to hide it either, just like staring at you. So that's an interesting point.
I imagine basically everybody here has had their eyes on us.
Yeah, that's fair, actually. That's a good point. That's a very good point. Very fair. And Toph, are you going to?
Yeah, you don't have to ask him twice. He's done with this stuffy BS.
Is there a door that shuts behind us, or is it all kind of open?
Yeah, so you pass out of the door and then it swings closed as Toph is the last out. The rest of you can convene just outside the mausoleum if you wish.
A little farther. Like Tess just kind
Sure.
of like, I don't know if Donica kept walking, but Tess will keep walking until
He's going
someone
like
stops.
the fuck away from here and home and away, like unless he stopped.
Yeah. If you get far enough where Tess thinks no one would hear them talk. Donica.
Your Majesty.
She like walks up and gives you a better hug.
Oh, embarrassed in there, were you? You have new friends
That sounds dumb.
You have cooler friends now.
Shut up. It's dumb and I haven't hugged anyone in 6 months, so just fuck off a little bit, will you?
It's good to see you.
Are you lying?
No. I looked for you. A lot.
They were adamant that I be entirely off the network.
And you follow those rules.
I wasn't really given an option.
Right. That's what they say, though. Just following orders.
I tried before I left, and that option was taken from me. Don't pretend I didn't try.
So you moved up in the world?
She'll like kind of ignore your question and turn. Sig, Toph. Hi.
Auditor Marshall, Sig will say with much more, I think, joviality than Donica's sneering version of it.
Oh, no. Absolutely not. Please, I've had enough formality to last.
Unable to hold himself back any longer. There's a blur of movement, probably only seen by Sig, as he scoops Tess up and spins her around, and then sets her back down on her feet and gives her a hug that is just like bear hug, just gives her the crushing hug, doesn't say a word, then steps back and he says, I knew you'd find yourself. And you see that that honest smile on his face. And then
It's good to see you too, Toph.
He looks at Dawn and he looks at Sig and he says, see, I told you she needed to find herself just like you did. And he just shakes his head and he goes, You're almost so good, I don't know whether to hate you.
Yes, that's for you to decide, not me.
Auditor. And he smiles. And you see this quirk of his smile. You know I'm going to be part of this, right? I can't trust you guys to do this on your own.
I'm not.
He kind of looks past Tess at you.
You're not what, Donica?
I'm not doing it. I won't be a part of it.
What compensation would you require?
Freedom to do what I want. I don't want to work for them anymore. I don't want any more of this shit every time. Do an impossible task and then we fuck it up and then they punish us for it. I'm not doing it. I have my own things going. And I've worked hard at those things. There's no incentive, no reason beyond do what you're told or we'll kill you. And that's tyranny. And so I'll die, but I'm not doing it.
Tess just kind of shakes her head. Looks at you. Sit down, Donica. And Donica, I'd like to know what your willpower is.
It is 6.
That face, what does that mean?
I have 4 successes on command.
But I have 6, right?
No. So the way the command works, I roll my D10 and my number 4, if it's a success or a failure, is your willpower.
Okay.
So with 6 as my benchmark, I now have 4 successes, and I'm trying to remember what happens.
I thought it was the other way around. I thought it was
No, the willpower sets the benchmark, like what you have to get equal or exceed. But I think
I didn't realize that this was going to
Donica
happen.
can
Otherwise, I would have looked this up.
Donica can actually expend one of his willpower points to resist it for one action, I think. But then he has to follow the command.
You better believe I'm resisting it with all my might.
Right. So difficulty equals the target's current willpower. More successes force the subject to act with greater vigor or for longer duration. Command being sentence. I don't know how many rounds it lasts. I think maybe it lasts for 4 rounds if it's 4 successes. It's a little unclear.
It is, yeah, I've just brought it up as well. It is kind of unclear. For the moment, then, that's tricky because we need to know how to resolve it. Otherwise, we don't know how Donica can act, do we? Oh, God.
Okay, well, I guess I sit down, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
Like in the dirt, in the graveyard.
And Tess will, after you sit down, immediately she'll say, I'm sorry, but you need to understand there are worse things than dying.
Am I free of this thing?
Yes.
Okay, I will stand up and I will walk away.
They can do more to you than kill you, Donica.
He'll stop and he will say, do you understand what just happened here?
I am nobody.
What did you just
Do you
do?
have- Made you sit down.
How did you do that?
It's one of my disciplines.
Goodbye. And he's gonna go.
They'll come for you.
I think behind you, Tess, you hear Toph say, "You shouldn't have done that."
Person who just ranted for however many minutes that they don't want to be controlled. He decided the best way to get them on our team was to tell them what to do by magic.
There are lessons which can be learned the hard way, and only the hard way. If he doesn't acknowledge
There are.
that there is more to this than he wants to admit, then he will never agree to it.
Whatever you say, Mr. G.
I think Toph is beside himself. He's torn because he is angry at Tess for doing that to Dawn. But when he hears Sig say that, he just rounds on him, anger in his face. And it's probably less about that. It's just a culmination has been building up. And he goes, "That was uncalled for, Sig." Now,
Oh, my words are uncalled for, but she can control our friend with her mind powers, and that's, oh, you shouldn't have done that. But me talking, oh, how uncalled for.
I think Toph gives a firm shove against Sig's chest as he runs after Donica.
Yeah, like I'm walking. I don't have celerity, so you'll catch me.
Yeah, and he would not aggressively, but just catch your the sleeve of your suit. Dawn, just stop. Listen to me. That was bullshit what Tess did.
Unforgivable is what it is. Whatever you did, this is different. This is mind control. It's unforgivable. I'm done.
And you see him, he's struggling. He is not Tess. This is not his strong point. Dawn, I don't have the words to convince you.
There aren't any. I'm going.
But
Out of London. Away. From this. From her.
They'll find you.
And then they'll kill me.
No. What's near Toph right now? Because he breaks it, whatever it is.
Gravestones. Loads of gravestones.
He just kicks it right in half. He goes, "God damn. I can't even protect you from yourself."
What fucking planet do you think I'm living on where you telling someone I did something was bad enough for me to never forgive you? Do you think someone violating my mind like that is going to be something I can forgive? Ever? In 1,000 years? No. I'm done. You can go and chase after our sires if you want. I'm not doing it.
Well, I'm not abandoning it, Tess. It's not happening.
Yep.
Even
thought
if
you
I
might.
disagree with some of her methods.
Mm-hmm.
And he thinks of something that someone said years ago. He goes, "You can't make an omelet without cracking any eggs." And then he kind of says that probably just doesn't carry the weight that he wants, but it's the only thing that comes to his mind.
You're thinking of the ends justify the means, and they don't for me. It's not how I think or how I am.
You're a hypocrite, Don. And then he turns, and just as quickly as he got there, he's gone again. Back over to where he left Sig and Tess.
I think in the interim, while Toph was gone, Sig, you saw Tess crumble. And she's on her knees in the dirt. I'm just like them.
They taught you to be.
I don't know if I could even explain what's happened the last 6 months.
We've all gone through it in our own ways. Things are different now for all of us. You're not the only one who's been learning, studying, growing in your powers. It's part of your clan. And I'll kind of like gesture to like his like fine Toreador suit. It's different here now. With him, with us. We're still so young in all this, but much less so than we were when you left. You can't just expect to have come back here, said a few words, given a couple orders, and have everything just be magic.
It was simpler.
It was. It'll never be like that again. It'll only get more complicated, more messy. We're all going to have to find the lines that we're willing to draw, what sides we're willing to stand on, what we're willing to do. Don's got his already. I have a hard time seeing those shifting, gaining or losing much ground. Maybe it's possible, I don't know. Mine are less set, and I'll just kind of shrug. There's still a lot to figure out. You don't have to be like them unless you want to be. And if you want to be, that's your own choice to make. And if you don't, that's your choice too.
I don't want to be like them, Siegfried.
What do you want to be like? Do you know?
I thought I knew. It's all very
Well, until
easy when it's a plan in your head and things are simpler.
Until you know what you want to be like, you'll be like them by instinct. It's what you've been taught. It's been drilled into you for the last 6 months. More than that. Figure out who you want to be, Tess. And then try to be it. I don't know what that is, what that looks like for you. But whatever it is, what we can do is try.
She kind of looks up at you from where she's still kneeling. And it's one of the red tears. Then I'll try.
Sig will reach a hand down, outstretched.
she'll kind of take it and let him help her up.
Yeah, he'll do so. And then he'll pull Tess in and, for the first time since, give her a hug.
Yeah, it's not warm like a human hug, but it's that familiarity.
It's a lot of teaching that you went through. It's only the beginning. We have a long time to figure it out.
I can't believe they agreed to 8 years. I thought I might get 1 or a couple months.
Well, when you have all the time in the world, 8 years isn't so bad.
Do you think he'd kill me on sight?
No, I don't. I don't think I'll want to talk to you or have anything to do with you, but at least not yet. I'll kind of say, with perhaps a bit of a grimace.
At some point, I'll have to find him, I guess.
Toph, you could have arrived back by now. I think that's sort of the same duration as yours and Donika's conversation. So, yeah, Toph arrives back at your position.
Such a fucking pig-headed.
I'm sorry.
Kick something else.
I'm sorry, Toph.
He looks at her. His face softens a bit when he sees the streaks of the tears, and then he looks at Sig, and then back at her, and he goes, "I tried to talk sense into him, but he's not seeing. He's not. I mean, you were wrong to do that, Tess, but I mean, I get it. I'd be pissed too, but he doesn't
I shouldn't
understand."
It's the kind of thing, and I shouldn't have.
It's done. He comes up and he just takes his thumb and he wipes the tears off of each of your cheeks. Maybe he'll see reason. Maybe he'll come around. But we can't let it stop us. Don's making his own path, but for what it's worth, I'm going to make sure that the two of you are going to be safe.
Thank you, Toph. I think for everything I've learned, I could probably use a bit of looking after, even so. From both of you.
I think we all need it. We all need looking after. And then he would grab them both and pull them in to a hug. Come on, bring it in. Bring it in.
Toph, you smell awful.
Yeah, pipes aren't working at my apartment. I'm sorry.
Well, we have 8 years and the secrets of the Camarilla at our backs. Sure, there's something interesting we can find in there.
Yeah, I gotta fill you guys in on some of the stuff I learned. Boy, does the Camarilla have some dirty laundry.
I've learned a couple secrets myself.
I haven't learned anything. Toph says. Except
Tess,
that I have to help find a new Primogen for the Brujah.
Tess gestures at the violin case that you dropped.
I don't see him as, it might look like dropping to Tess, but to Sig, what he would have seen is him gingerly put it down, and then there's that blur as he takes off. And he's like, oh yeah. And he reaches down and he picks up the violin case.
Yeah, she pulls out the sleek black phone that had been issued her, and she, presses play on it, and you hear your music. I could really use something new after 6 months,
He pauses for a moment, and he looks at her, and he looks down at his violin case, and he goes, haven't, that was the first time I've played in years. And he sets it down, he opens it up, and he does like anyone, he pretends, and then he starts to play. And Jeff, he starts to play, and you immediately recognize the song that he is playing. And I don't want to butcher it by trying to say what it is, but Sig definitely recognized it very soon into it. And he closes his eyes, and you would just see like there's just a little bit of the edging of tears, the blood tears in each of his eyes. This is truly something that is a passion for Toph, and it's much more refined and sophisticated than that crude exterior that Toph typically has.
Yeah, Tess just kind of, I think, like links an arm with Siegfried as she listens, like leans against him, and feels perhaps a bit more human than she has in a long time. And at the same time, she feels this absence that hi. Internet's back. She feels that absence, and she can't help but look over her shoulder in the direction Donica disappeared and wonder if he can hear the music too.
No, he hears kung 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 kung, and he ate already today, but he's like furious and thinks like, what's the point in these human connections? They all fuck you all the time, like every time, repeatedly when he trusts someone. And so he like is like feeling very vampire-y, and he's going to hunt someone, and he's going to kill that person on the way back to his abbey, and like take out some frustration, something, and there will be a part of his brain that's like, yes, good, embrace it.
It's as you're walking, or rather skulking into the shadows, blood still about your mouth, perhaps. You just haven't, perhaps the beast part of you, you didn't do it clean, put it that way. It was just a boom, kill someone, which we'll talk about at another time. You hear a as your phone goes. And you appear to have a unread message upon your ShrekNet inbox thing. Now, we did discuss this out of game, but to access ShrekNet on your mobile will take a computer roll to make sure that it is secure. So if you'd like to do that for me, if you want to read the message, you don't have to do it in the field. It's up to you.
I don't think Donica does it. I think he waits till he gets home. It's safer. he's not a risk taker. He's furious.
that's fine.
But one thing he takes very seriously is his secret identity.
That's fine. That's why I wanted to give you
Yeah.
that
So
option. That's absolutely fine.
He'll probably walk quicker to get home, knowing that there's something waiting for him.
Okay. Well, I guess we can just tell you what you find when you get there then in that case. There's a response to the message that you sent at the very beginning of the session back to the Underprince. It simply says, where and when. And that is where we will leave our vampiric creatures of the night tonight. Good fucking lord. We're back. Jeez. As we do with every session at the end of Vampire the Masquerade, we do an experience. We, first of all, award a point to all players who turned up, so you already get that. We're now going to discuss learning curve, and I think we should start with Siegfried. What did Siegfried learn in this session, Jeff?
Siegfried has learned that it's important to find a line, that there's power in being willing to stand up to the Camarilla, and there's power in having their resources available, and that kind of seeing such kind of stark opposites of the spectrum, knows that the key to getting what he wants in the end is probably going to be somewhere in the middle, knowing when to turn his back and when to gladly accept the secrets that he's being offered by them, and will hope to take advantage of those secrets very soon.
Yes. What did Toph learn?
Sorry, I couldn't find my mouse. It was across 3 monitor screens. I couldn't find it. What did Toph learn? Oh my gosh, this is probably one of the hardest questions after every session. Because when you play a vampire that is so like feral, it is often really difficult because he's not usually doing the higher thinking stuff. He usually leaves that to other people. But I think what Toph's takeaway from this is he had his out, right? He was sitting in there. Mr. G says, you guys got to go do this. And that was his out. He could have literally have said, well, good luck, guys. I hope you got it. It's what you need. I'm going to be off dealing with my stuff here, helping pick my next Primogen. But I think what he learned is that affection, if that's the proper word. But it's probably the closest thing that he has felt over these many decades towards anyone else that is not one of his kindred. And it's true affection, I think, even for Dawn, even though they have a lot of friction between the two of them. He means it when he does not want Dawn to make this choice, even though he understands why. Because he has seen probably some of these more devious, terrible things that the Camarilla has done. Getting dusted is probably the easy out. And he does not want that for Dawn. So I think that's what he learned, is that just that piece of just hanging with the folks you're really connected to. It's really important.
Donica, what did Donica learn?
What's the point in other people, I think is what he learned. Because he was like very excited to see Tess again, and then there was this weird reception, and then like maybe something a bit more genuine, followed by like what for him is like one of the worst things you could do. Like he's all about individualism and like his own freedom, and then to like use mind control is like particularly like heinous crime for him. And so I think he thinks then like he is on his own, and like every time he's on his own he does well. And then like Tess comes back and then this follows, and it's like a question of like what do I get from these people apart from heartache? You know, difficulties and heartache.
It's almost like perhaps it was maybe the heartache that could have drawn you in, but maybe not now. We'll have to find out. And finally, Tess, welcome back. What did she learn? Quite a lot.
Yeah. I think perhaps the most important thing she learned was that her time away changed her in ways she didn't realize, in ways she hadn't noticed, because she hadn't been around anyone who cared about a person as a person in a while.
Yeah, that's pretty spot on. Amazing. Well, once we've covered that, we now talk about something cool the other characters did, so we all get to weigh in on this. So I think we'll just go around in the same order again. So what's something cool that Siegfried did? And anyone can jump in at this point.
Telling me to shut up.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. That was cool. That was cool. That was very cool.
That was everybody's favorite because it was just, oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
You know.
I liked how Jeff had Siegfried act during the whole kind of like situation. Like he really was putting on the airs of a toreador. You could see that him spending time with them really was, he was embracing it. And he didn't get really deep into it. I would have loved it, and that would have been my moment if he would have. And you just touched upon it, Jeff, when you mentioned the Sabbat, and you're kind of sitting with all these prim and proper toreadors, and they're all kind of like, but you know, you're still. I just see you being there, and I thought that moment was really nice. But the whole time there was pretty good, I thought.
And I think my favorite little moment was like pull out the chair and bow to Lala. Like that was just such a nice little, like, perfect toreador touch.
I can't believe anyone didn't mention this because the line broke my heart. It was when you said, and I'll paraphrase it because I probably won't get it word perfect, but when you said, choose who you want to be to Tess. Like that was so beautiful. Like, and I didn't like. Don't get me wrong, Jeff. You're always full of good lines, but that one in particular, made my eyes water.
Also, okay, Mr. G was great.
Yeah,
so good.
Different levels of roller coaster. Something cool that Toph did.
I just liked Toph introducing Byron as Brad. That might be my favorite.
Yep, calling him Brad all the time was great. Very tough. Like, so petty, you know? I also like him trying to run after me and, like, convince me with nonsense, you know? Like, which is typical Toph. Like, he doesn't get Donika's situation, and so he's like, yeah, but what about this thing? And Donika's like, what the fuck are you two talking about? You know? Like, it's a good
I'm going to
disconnect.
say, I'd say that, but I would say it for a different reason, which I think will count, because there's the thing that has always been present with Toph is that he wants to keep the family together. And in my mind, my reading, that goes back to when he was originally told, these are 3 kindred who have just been ditched in London, you have to babysit them. And I think from that point on, he's always had that. And I like that that's never gone away. It doesn't matter what's happened between them all. He's still trying to keep them together. So I like that he went after you for that reason.
You know how like baby animals will imprint on a mother when they hatch? Toph did like the reverse of that.
Yeah, definitely.
On the baby.
Yeah.
The baby
I just love seeing Toph's ping pong back and forth between like, Tess, that was really stupid. Why would you do that? But Donica, I know that was messed up, but please, like, just like trying to find any thread that you could possibly weave between like, they're wrong, you're wrong, we're all wrong. So, but let's still be wrong together, even though it's all a mess. Like, just trying to find like any way for it to work. Is like acknowledging all like the hurt that everyone's done, but still trying to find a way to make it work anyways. Is like a very interesting thing, especially given Toph's like normal sort of distant persona, which is like obviously a mask at this point.
That was everyone, wasn't it, for Toph? Toph's cool thing. Something cool that Donica did.
I liked when he just showed up, like right next to Toph and Sig. It was just like, hey.
Yeah, rigging the recording on his phone, and just like being straight up of just every single person he talks to, being like, "Interesting, tell me more." Just so plainly, just building up this like secret library of recordings of everyone talking about all their clan dirt and dirty Camarilla business.
I love that it doesn't matter. He speaks his mind regardless of who's in the room. And as he was listening to things kind of roll out, and he was hearing a bunch of BS, and he wasn't getting a straight answer, he was just like, basically, and I'm done. I'm not doing it. And he sticks by that. And I like that. That's what happened. That moment was great, and Lloyd, of course, carried it right through, and it's believable when it happens. So it's one of the things I both love and hate about Donica.
Yeah, I mean, that was the I think the climax of that whole session actually was that argument there. It was really cool. It was. What else? That is really prevalent in my mind right now. Oh no, that's it. I like that you just said I'm going to straight up just go and kill someone. And we'll do the humanity thing for that. I thought as we were wrapping up at the end of the session, I wasn't just going to make a roll for it, you know. Now you can just do that. So I thought that was pretty cool. He was like, no, he's embracing the beast. He's just going to go out there and kill someone. So I was like, fair play. And finally, something cool that Tess did.
Like the lawyer stuff?
Yeah.
Sorry, you go.
No, you already started.
Okay. The lawyer stuff, where she was like, well, actually, I think you'll find quite specifically blah, blah, blah. Like, that was good. Yeah, I like that.
I loved seeing the instinct of all this like training, aka brainwashing, depending on who you ask. Like of that instinct being the first thing that comes of like, we're back together. Here's my new power that I learned to control you. And then seeing that immediately break into like, oh my God, who am I? What did I just do? Like seeing that how quickly that realization kind of set in of like, oh my God, I've turned into a person that I don't know or recognize. And that was pretty rough of a reintroduction. That dramatic shift in realization was really cool.
For me, it was all of those things, obviously, but in addition, you calling Mr. G out. I was careful because, like, there's bits of this that I've actually written down to make sure that I got the facts straight and everything. But on the second delivery of hunting down the sires, yeah, I didn't say alleged. He just said Sabat, and you're like, alleged, and I was like, yeah, you're right. So you properly put him in his place, which I thought, fair play. That shows like a proper distance between the tests that we had 6 months ago to now.
So I apologize. I had to take a phone call. But
No worries,
I don't know
man.
if this was said yet, but there are several moments that I liked. I liked the whole opening scene with Tess, but the one that really stood out for me as a fellow player was when we walked in and she was standing there and she was just very commanding. Like she had a presence in the room, and it was so night and day different. And that's one of the reasons I had Toph just kind of stop in his tracks, because he sees it. And I think it was such a simple thing way that Taylor presented it, but they carried so much power. So I really appreciated that. Good, well done, Taylor.
Yeah, me and Taylor had a conversation, or rather, I mentioned that this might be a good idea. We're always saying how it's cool and prudent and good in a role-playing game to have someone as the committed leader of the group. And being from the Clan of Kings and her being taken away to training, I thought, oh, this would be interesting if Tess comes back and she's put in charge of hunting the people that created you down. But then what kind of leader has she come back as? That's the really, really intriguing stuff. And I'm really looking forward to finding out more about that as well, which is just so exciting. It's just such an exciting reintroduction. And that's all Taylor. Like, I didn't have any part of that. So that surprised me as much as everyone else, I can assure you. So that is us returning to Vampire the Masquerade London. I'd also like to give a big shout out to Lloyd. Huge thank you to Lloyd, not only for creating the wonderful overlays that you've seen in the stream today, because they're absolutely fantastic. You can get his services using his Fiverr. I know he would never dream of pitching his own work, but I'm going to do it for him because it's well worth it. Look at it, it's beautiful. And also hosting it, because Lloyd is also hosting this because my laptop is a big old pile of junk. So big thank you to Lloyd there. Thank you for my wonderful players who have just delivered instantly, like not even missing a beat, back into Vampire the Masquerade after a long hiatus. We're back now to fairly regular gaming. We've got to sort out the next session, but we're going to be back, and we're going to be back more often. And I'm excited to see where we go. So with all that said, I'm going to say thank you ever so much for watching, and I hope that all of your performances are up to standard. Press the button, Lloyd.